Roughly 15,000 years ago, deep inside a cavern in what is now England, a group of prehistoric people sat down to eat their dead. But they didn't stop there. Once the flesh was consumed, they carefully crafted the remaining skulls into functional drinking cups and etched intricate geometric patterns into the leftover arm bones. Afterward, they simply went about their daily routine. To ancient humans, this wasn't a scene from a nightmare. It was just a normal afternoon. We often picture our distant ancestors as simpler, unrefined versions of ourselves, hunting game, gathering berries, and huddling around flickering campfires. In many ways, they were surprisingly like us. Yet, the more archaeologists dig up and analyze, the stranger the reality becomes. Some of the everyday practices these people carried out without a second thought are so alien to modern minds that it takes a moment for the reality to truly sink in. Start with one of the most unsettling archaeological discoveries ever made in a European cave, because virtually nothing else compares to it. Gough's cave sits nestled within Cheddar Gorge in Somerset, England. When archaeologists systematically excavated the site, they uncovered a mass of human bones intermingled with animal remains. Astonishingly, both sets of bones had been subjected to the exact same butchering techniques. There were clear-cut marks where meat had been sliced away from the bone, and long bones had been deliberately cracked open to extract the nutrient-rich marrow inside. Human tooth marks were even found pressed directly into human bone. Conclusive proof that the inhabitants ate one another, with the evidence literally carved into their remains. Furthermore, 3 human skulls had been meticulously repurposed into drinking bowls. Dr. Silvia Bello, a lead researcher from the Natural History Museum in London, described the precise procedure required to make them. The skull was systematically stripped of muscle and tissue, the base was broken away, and the fractured edges were carefully chipped and smoothed down to create a clean rim. This wasn't frantic, desperate survival behavior. It was slow, deliberate craftsmanship. Someone invested considerable time and effort into fashioning a cup from a companion's skull. What makes this discovery even stranger is that the cave was filled with abundant animal bones. These people were not starving. They chose to butcher and process their dead despite having plenty of game available, which means the act held deep cultural or spiritual significance. It was almost certainly a sacred ritual. They even carved delicate zigzag patterns into the arm bones of the very people they consumed. Whether decorating the remains of a loved one was an expression of grief, a spiritual ceremony, or something entirely beyond modern concepts, no one can say for sure. What they did is undeniable. Why they did it is lost to history. Now, step back much further into the past, 10 times further back, to a discovery that predates Gough's cave by a massive temporal gulf. In 1899, a scientist excavating a Neanderthal site near the town of Krapina, Croatia, uncovered hundreds of fossilized Neanderthal bones alongside thousands of stone artifacts. Mixed into the sediment were 8 white-tailed eagle talons originating from at least 3 individual birds. For over a century, these talons were largely overlooked in storage. Then, in 2013, a museum curator named Dvorka Radovsik re-examined the collection and noticed subtle details. Microscopic cut marks and smooth notches carefully worked into the claws by hand. Her research team analyzed the marks and published their findings in 2015, proving that the talons had been cut, polished, and bound together to be worn as a necklace or bracelet. These eagle claws are 130,000 years old. That is roughly 80,000 years before modern Homo sapiens even set foot in Europe. Neanderthals, a species historically dismissed as brutish, dim-witted, and primitive, were actively hunting apex predators, harvesting their talons, polishing them, and wearing them as body ornamentation. No modern humans were around to teach them this skill. They conceived, designed, and executed the idea entirely on their own. Draping yourself in the claws of a deadly creature sent a powerful message. It was an unmistakable statement about status, courage, and personal achievement. The very same impulse that drives people to hang trophies on their walls today was already fully operational 130,000 years ago in a Neanderthal wearing eagle talons around his neck. Next, consider a discovery that completely changes how we view the history of ancient medicine. Trepanation is the surgical process of drilling, scraping, or cutting a hole through a living person's skull. It represents the oldest surgical procedure known to science, with physical evidence stretching back at least 8,000 years. Skulls bearing these artificial openings have been unearthed across Europe, South America, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific Islands. Think about that for a moment. The exact same high-risk surgical operation emerged independently in entirely isolated cultures that shared no contact whatsoever. A healer in ancient Peru and a healer in ancient France both arrived at the same radical conclusion, that the best way to treat a sick person was to bore a hole directly into their head. These operations were performed using primitive stone blades, slowly scraping through dense bone while the patient was fully conscious or, at best, mildly sedated with local herbs. Remarkably, a vast number of these skulls show smooth, remineralized bone around the margins of the hole, proving that the patients survived the procedure and lived for years afterward. One Peruvian skull famously exhibited 7 separate trepanation holes drilled at different points in the individual's life, and all 7 showed clear signs of healing. That single individual endured brain surgery 7 distinct times and kept right on living. Some of these interventions were likely intended to relieve intracranial pressure following traumatic head injuries, which makes sound medical sense even today. Others were performed on skulls showing no physical trauma at all, suggesting a ritualistic or spiritual motivation, perhaps to release trapped spirits or allow divine energy to enter. In all probability, medical logic and spiritual belief were deeply intertwined. Regardless of the motive, early humans underwent this grueling procedure regularly and survived it consistently, all accomplished with flint tools and zero understanding of microscopic germs. Now, consider a custom that sounds straightforward at first, but grows increasingly bizarre the more you picture it in practice. For at least 100,000 years, early humans gathered a red mineral pigment called ochre, ground it into fine powder, mixed it with animal fat, bone marrow, or plant oils, and slathered the thick paste all over their bodies. Archaeologists excavating Blombos Cave in South Africa discovered a complete, remarkably preserved compound mixing toolkit dating back 100,000 years. The site contained grinding stones, shell storage vessels, leftover red paste, and bone applicators all sitting together, leading lead researcher Christopher Henshelwood to describe it as the world's oldest known chemistry workshop. This reddish paste served several practical purposes simultaneously. It acted as an effective natural sunscreen, repelled biting insects, preserved and waterproofed animal hide clothing, and served as a powerful medium for social expression. Different colors, textures, and painted designs likely signaled tribal affiliation, social status, or spiritual readiness within a community. Try to visualize what daily life actually looked like. Every single person you encountered was coated from head to toe in a thick, dark, reddish-brown paste of crushed minerals and animal fat. That was the baseline human appearance. Clean, bare skin would have looked completely bizarre, exposed, and unnatural. Modern culture has the visual picture of ancient humans entirely backward. Then there is the matter of dental modification. Dating back approximately 14,000 years across multiple archaeological sites in Europe, researchers keep finding the exact same pattern. Human skeletons with specific, completely healthy teeth deliberately extracted. These teeth weren't rotted out by decay, nor were they knocked out in violent combat. They were methodically pulled out in a consistent layout across numerous individuals within the same community, indicating a shared cultural norm rather than an individual choice. Dr. Isabel Crèvecoeur, an anthropologist who has analyzed these remains extensively, believes the systematic extraction marked a major milestone in an individual's life, most likely the ritual transition from childhood into adulthood. It created a permanent, instantly recognizable physical mark that signaled one's maturity and social standing to the rest of the tribe. When you looked at the adults around you, everyone shared the exact same missing teeth in the exact same positions. Modern observers look at these skulls and see bodily mutilation or dental trauma. The people living back then looked at one another and simply saw a mature adult. Finally, there is a practice that is perhaps the quietest, yet in many ways the most profoundly human entry on the list. In many ancient societies, when a family member died, the body was not immediately removed from the home. It remained inside the living space for days, weeks, or even months. The Torajan people of Sulawesi, Indonesia, still practice a modern variation of this tradition today. They keep deceased family members in the family home, continuing to dress them, serve them symbolic meals, and treat them as honored guests in daily life until a proper, elaborate funeral can be arranged. This custom stretches back thousands of years, with similar practices appearing in ancient cultures across multiple continents. When viewed through an ancient lens, it makes far more sense than it initially seems. In a world without hospitals, funeral parlors, or professional morticians to whisk a body away within hours. Death wasn't an abrupt event followed by an immediate return to routine. The physical shell remained present even as the life force departed. Processing the profound gap between those two states took time. Sitting alongside the body as the days passed allowed loved ones to navigate grief gradually, supported by their broader community. Modern society has engineered elaborate systems to remove death from daily sight as quickly as humanly possible. Ancient humans possessed no such machinery. Death was simply something you lived beside, quite literally, until you were emotionally ready to let it go. Every single custom highlighted here was entirely ordinary to the people performing it. Drinking from a human skull, stringing together eagle talons, drilling through a neighbor's forehead, smearing rancid red fat over every inch of skin, knocking out healthy teeth, or sharing a living room with a deceased relative for months on end. None of this struck them as strange. None of it caused anyone to pause and question what was happening. The strangeness belongs entirely to us. We are the ones looking back across thousands of generations, finding these behaviors difficult to comprehend. To them, it wasn't a bizarre historical artifact. It was just life. It was just what you did. It was just an ordinary Tuesday.